All right, let's talk about something we all deal with every single day in our schools: information. A ton of it, right? From grade books to parent contact lists, we are all guardians of some really sensitive data. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know to protect that information and to do it with confidence.
So, are you a data guardian? The answer is absolutely yes. If you're working with any kind of school-related info, you are on the front lines protecting our community's privacy. Let's make sure you've got all the tools you need to do that job and feel good about it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, we'll get into why all this matters so much. Then, we'll talk about the golden rule of student privacy. It's a big one. After that, we'll look at some key exceptions and tackle the tricky world of classroom tech. And we'll wrap it all up with a super simple checklist you can start using like today.
So, let's start with the big question. Why is this so important? Well, think about it. We have this fundamental duty to care for our students' physical safety and well-being, right? That's a no-brainer. In today's world, protecting their data is just as critical. It's really the digital extension of that same duty of care. You know, it's so easy to just see spreadsheets and documents and forget that behind every single one of those data points is a real student, a real person. The laws, well, they set the legal baseline. But what we're really aiming for here is something bigger, building and keeping the trust of our students and their families. That's the real goal.
Okay, now let's dive into the big one, the cornerstone of student privacy law. You've probably heard of it. It's called FERPA. That stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And honestly, it's pretty much the golden rule for how we handle student records here in the U.S.
So, what exactly does FERPA protect? The law uses this term education record. And you need to know that this definition is super broad. I mean, think of it this way. If it's about a student and the school keeps a record of it, it's pretty much guaranteed to be an education record. Grades, discipline notes, schedules, even health info, it's all in there. FERPA gives parents 4 main rights, and these rights actually transfer over to the student once they turn 18. So what are they? Parents can inspect their child's records, they can ask for corrections if something's wrong, they can file a complaint, and here's the most important one. They have the right to give their consent before the school shares their child's information. So here's the simple takeaway. When in doubt, you almost always need consent.
Okay, let's make this real with a quick scenario. Imagine this. A parent comes in and asks to see their 7th grader's records, maybe to check for errors. But an administrator tells them, sorry, those records are private. So who's in the right here?
You guessed it, the parent is 100% right. The school is legally obligated to provide access to those records. By saying no, that administrator isn't just being difficult. They're actually denying the parent's fundamental rights under FERPA. And just so you know, the school has a reasonable amount of time to get them the info, but no more than 45 days. All right, so we've established that consent is the default rule. But like with any good rule, there are a few important exceptions. FERPA has some specific situations where schools can share information without getting that permission first. Let's break down the 2 most common ones you're going to run into.
Okay, here's a situation I'm sure we've all seen. A principal posts a student of the week picture on the school's social media, photo, name, grade level, the whole deal. An upset parent calls saying they never gave consent. So, did the principal just violate FERPA? Well, the classic lawyer answer here is, it depends. This is where we run into our first major exception to the consent rule. It's called directory information. And it's what allows schools to share certain things like a student's name or photo, but, and this is a big but, only if they've followed some very specific rules.
So for that social media post to be okay, the school has to have done its homework. First, the school must tell parents exactly what it considers directory information. Second, they have to notify parents about this policy every single year. And third, and this is crucial, they have to give parents the chance to opt out. So before that principal posted the picture, they needed to check and make sure that student wasn't on the opt-out list. And here's a pro tip. Even if it's technically allowed, sharing isn't required. Often the best move is just to honor the parents' wishes and take the post down.
Okay, on to the second big exception, and this is one we all rely on every single day. It's called the school official exception. This is what lets us share student info internally with our colleagues without having to get parental consent for every little conversation. But there is a really important catch.
And that catch is something called legitimate educational interest. It's a fancy phrase for a simple idea. You can only access the data you need to do your job. That's it. It's not a free pass to browse student files.
So yes, you can absolutely look up records for a student in your class to plan your lessons. But no, you can't look up your neighbor's kid just because you're curious. It all comes down to a professional need to know.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about the modern classroom. I'm talking about EdTech, apps, and surveys. All the same rules we've discussed still apply, but things can get a little more complicated when we bring third-party companies into the mix.
So here's the story we all know. You're browsing online and you find a fantastic new educational app. It looks perfect for your students. So the question is, can you just have your 7th graders create accounts and start using it tomorrow? What do you think?
The answer, unfortunately, is a hard no, at least not yet. Why? Because there are actually 3 different legal hurdles to clear. First, under FERPA, that app company needs to be vetted by the district. Second, there's another law called COPPA, that's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and it has really strict rules for any online service used by kids under 13. And finally, many states have their own laws that require specific data privacy contracts before we can share any student data.
I love this. It really sums it all up. The bottom line is just so simple. You should never, ever use an app that hasn't been officially approved by the district. There's a vetting process for a reason. So please, always check your school's approved app list before you ask students to sign up for a single thing. Okay, so that's third-party apps. But what about information we collect from students ourselves? Let's look at another scenario. A teacher creates one of those get-to-know-you surveys, but it asks about things like preferred pronouns and if students have any mental health challenges. A parent complains. Is that parent correct?
And the answer is yes, the parent actually has a very valid point here. There's yet another federal law, this one's called the PPRA, the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. It says you can't survey students on certain protected sensitive topics without getting parental consent first. So asking about hobbies? Totally fine. But asking about things like mental health problems, political beliefs, or gender identity, that requires you to get parental consent beforehand. So the teacher has 2 choices, get consent or just take those questions off the survey.
Okay. Whew, we have covered a lot of ground, right? From big federal laws to really specific classroom situations. So let's pull it all together and bring it home with a simple, practical checklist you can use every single day.
Here's your daily practice. Step 1, minimize the data you're using. Only access what you absolutely need to do your job. Step 2, verify and vet. Never use an unapproved app. Step 3, respect the rights of parents and students. And finally, step 4, just think before you share. Always ask yourself, do I have consent or a clear legal exception here? If you make these 4 things a habit, you'll be building a fantastic culture of privacy and trust.
Because at the end of the day, protecting their data is just like protecting them. It's not just about following the rules, it's a core part of who we are as educators. So as we wrap up, I want you to think about this. What's one small change you can make in your daily routine to become an even better data guardian? Because your diligence, your care, that is our first and absolute best line of defense.